tourists in the UK, why do you guys talk so loud? I asked you guys on Instagram and on our Adventures and Naps chat room, what are things that tourists in the UK do that you really wish they didn't? Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alanna and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 8 years. Now, the first time I came to the UK, I was 17. Many years ago. And while I was walking around Parliament and taking photos of red phone booths as a tourist, as a teenager, I never expected that one day I'd live here. I started out as a really annoying tourist, and let me tell you, I've done basically everything on this list. And now, having lived here for 8 years, I can see the error of my ways. So without further ado, let's go. Now, the first one that came to mind for me, and a lot of you guys mentioned this, was simply getting in the way or abruptly stopping on the pavement. So any scenario where you find yourself out and about and all of a sudden a tourist just like stops where they're walking, like in the middle of the pavement, or they're walking to a shop or a cafe and they're kind of like in the door and they just stop. And I get it, there is a lot to look at here. I've been there, but I think a lot of tourists forget that people live and work here, right? Especially when you go to London, you're like, wow, look at all this stuff, and you forget that people are trying to get to meetings and appointments and catching trains so they can get home. People work and live there. It's real life. And even for me, like, I don't live in London, but I go there often. It's a lovely place. I would never live there. But I got laser eye surgery done in London. So I was having to go in for appointments and like checkups and that kind of stuff. So I had a medical appointment, and you know, it's at its time, it's at a specific time. You don't want to be late. And I'm like trying to get there, and there's people just like, you know, looking around. London's a beautiful place and I totally get it, but just in the middle of the sidewalk, just looking around, it's like, please move. I don't want to be that person and be rude, but please just maybe stand to the side or something. Something you guys mentioned often and that you find really annoying is when tourists talk too loud, especially on the train or at a museum or an art gallery or places where it's common to find tourists, but you're actually supposed to be quiet. And I have actually noticed this with some absolutely wonderful Americans. I don't know why North Americans' voices just tend to be a bit louder. I don't know why. Because it's not necessarily offensive or rude or annoying in North America, but maybe that's because everybody's volume is just a little bit louder. But I definitely notice it here where, you know, if I'm out and about with an American or I'm in London, that's where you're gonna see all the tourists, and you can hear an American voice and it's like 10 decibels higher than everybody else. And I've gotten to the point now where I get really embarrassed because it's like, do you not hear how much louder you are? I don't know, I just get like secondhand embarrassment just thinking about it. Another really popular point is when tourists think that London is the UK. And of course we know that really isn't true. I think London is a wonderful place. There is so much, like it is such a dense city, not just in people, but in things, in food and drink and stuff to see and history, and there's a lot. But London is very much like its own animal. It's a great animal, but it is not replicated anywhere else in the UK. So if you go to London and you just assume the rest of the UK is like that, that's really not the case. Saying that though, I totally understand the idea of going on holiday, going on vacation, and you go to the capital city. You don't necessarily know the best like countryside village that you should go to or the best small town. You go to the capital. I am guilty of doing this. I go to Spain, I go to Barcelona, I go to France, I go to Paris. But it is kind of annoying when people say like, oh, The UK is like checked off of my visit list because I've been to London, so I don't really need to go back. You are missing out on so much. Someone mentioned what's really annoying is taking a ton of photos of something that is really unimpressive. For example, in Birmingham, there's a group of tourists taking loads of photos of pigeons. Just a group of pigeons on the ground, tourists just losing their minds over it, right next to a gorgeous historic cathedral. I guess it really comes down to what is normal in your country. Maybe beautiful architecture is kind of normal and you're like not really interested, but a bird you've never seen before? Incredible. A lot of people mentioned it's really annoying seeing people queue up to take photos of a red telephone box. I have done that. That's me. There's something about the telephone box that is so iconic to foreigners, speaking from experience, where it's something that is so visual. It's like a visual representation of the UK for non-Brits, right? It's like, oh, that's the thing that they have. I've seen it in movies and TV and stuff, and we don't have it back home, and I want a picture with it. But of course, as a tourist, you don't understand that most of them are actually disgusting. And you would not catch me dead in one of those now. What's something that's annoying that tourists do? Not ordering in rounds at the pub. So this is not something that, I mean, other countries obviously do it, but I feel like it's very much ingrained in the like social culture here in the UK is you go to the pub with a group, one person is in charge of ordering the drinks and paying for the drinks for that group, and everybody takes their turn. In terms of like efficiency, it's really good because that means you get one person standing at the bar, you have one person ordering, one person paying for the drinks, and it's just easy. Whereas sometimes if you go to a pub, especially in a tourist heavy area, and there's a group of 10 people, they're all together, but they're all individually ordering, they're all individually paying. It's just a bit of a mess. One that was so popular, so many people talked about it, have to do with escalators. And you probably already know what I'm about to say, but we have two major points here. Number one, you get off of an escalator and you just stand there. Just standing right in the middle of the flow of traffic. And number two, standing on the wrong side of the escalator. So first up, getting off the escalator, standing there, I get it, you don't know where you're going, you're kind of like looking around, or maybe you're looking at your phone and you're trying to figure out which direction you need to go into, but it drives me insane because you are screwing over everybody behind you. And it's such an easy issue to solve. Get off the escalator and move to the side. Find a quiet place out of the flow of traffic, look at your map, look at your phone, whatever you need to do, and just get out of the way. And of course, not knowing which side of the escalator to stand on. So I find this is particularly important in London, less so in other places, but I find because of the sheer amount of people in London, it's almost vital. So there is this rule, I would say it's unwritten, but I actually think there's quite a few signs in London talking about this. Of course, if you don't read English, then you're not gonna know. But the idea is that when you're taking an escalator, if you just want to stand on the escalator, absolutely fine. Stand on the right. Because if there are people who are running to their train, running to an appointment, late for work, who knows? There's a lot of people in London and they're all going somewhere. At least those people can walk and or run up or down the escalator on the left-hand side. I've definitely found myself in this situation when my train, comes once an hour and I'm gonna miss it, so I need to run down the escalator, but there's people on the left side just standing, or what's really annoying is, there's two, you're traveling together and they're just standing side by side. Please don't do that. I beg you. Now, some British people said it's super annoying when tourists use the word quaint to describe a place in the UK. In humble opinion, I disagree. The idea being that quaint, like don't use quaint, just say small, right? But that's not what that word means. Quaint is very much like it's something that is unusual but good and like historical and it's interesting. It's a good word. So politely on this one, I disagree. I think quaint is a lovely word. I've said it and I'll say it again. What's something that's really annoying? Can you guess it? I'd be surprised if you did, but I think you'll agree. When tourists try to tease or annoy the King's Guard. And I absolutely agree with this. On one hand, when I was thinking about this, I was like, okay, well, maybe they don't understand that it's really offensive. But then it's like, well, why are you doing it? Because you're trying to get a reaction out of them because you know they're not supposed to. So you know what you're doing is bad. It's so disrespectful, and just like, if I was with someone, maybe on a holiday, on a trip to London, and they were like trying to annoy, tease, whatever, the King's Guard, I would find that as a huge red flag. There's literally no point in doing it, but you're trying to like be funny, but it's not funny. You just look like a prick. Another thing that's really annoying, complaining about the weather. Now, complaining about the weather, talking about the weather is a very important and much loved British pastime, but you have to be British to do it. As a foreigner, I think there is an unwritten rule that you have to live in the UK for at least 3 calendar years before you are given the opportunity and you are allowed to complain about the weather. So as a tourist, no, you can't do it. Another thing that is super annoying, and I have done this, I'm so sorry, is when a tourist says they're going to Europe on holiday. Where? Paris versus Glasgow are 2 very different places. Where are you going? Although, to be fair, Glasgow is no longer in Europe. So that is a video topic for another day. But yes, I have done this before. It's so easy to just clump all those countries together. Yeah, I'm going to Europe, right? Like, I guess it's kind of like saying you're going to America, because America is so big. It's like, well, where are you going? Are you going to New York City, or are you going to Ohio? Because they're very different. But at least that is just one country. What about turning up with the wrong currency and expecting to be able to use it? To be honest, I've never been this bold, but apparently it does happen. When tourists will show up with US dollars or euros and expect to just use them, which I can't even imagine. I would be so embarrassed. I think I would simply pass away. And probably the largest sin you could commit in the UK is to jump a queue. If you'd like to watch more content, which honestly would be very cool, how about checking out this one where I tried hot bovril for the first time. Did not know that was a thing. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!